The opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, and with me is my entire expert panel, Christina and Anna. How are you guys?
Good. How are you, Elliot?
I am good. How are you, Christina?
I'm good.
I mean, Anna.
Well, I feel good. I feel always happy when you say like expert panel. It makes me feel like in this topic, like I'm some kind of health specialist or economist or
I feel
kind of
so
stuff.
smart.
Exactly. Like, thank you, Elliot.
Well, anytime, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to make you guys feel good about yourself, and you guys are experts, or the closest thing to experts I could get. So that's where we are. But also joining the panel is special guest Hannah Salamon-Vegh. Hannah, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
We actually know you through Nina, so thankfully we were able to get in contact and have you come on the show as well. So again, thank you.
I'm very excited for this evening.
Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Hannah Salamon-Vegh, and I'm completing my Bachelor in Music Research at Western University. I'm also the president of the Pro-Life Club at Western University, and I have my own piano and theory studio.
Amazing. We were talking earlier in the show that my mom is also a music teacher, so we got a lot in common already.
Yes.
But coming up in 15 minutes, we'll be talking about our main topic, which is government lockdowns. But first, let's take a look at our top stories in our weekly recap, starting with the U.S. election 2020 check-in. Things are heating up while also calming down in the States. We've got Georgia recount revealed some uncounted ballots. However, Trump still lost. Pennsylvania has certified their results. I believe Georgia now certified their results as well. And while Trump has yet to concede, the transition team has agreed to start the process. So for that to happen, does that mean Trump is, in his way, conceding?
That's what indicates actually, like if the transition is happening, is because there is a certain level of acceptance from the U.S. President Donald Trump in this case. And honestly, at this point, this seems like an endless story. It seems like it comes in seasons, because every time we learn something about the U.S. election of this year. But we will have to see what happened. Maybe he's saying too much, Trump, in front of the media, but in the backside, he's actually just like, backstage, he's just like, well, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Christina?
Yeah, I saw an article, I think it was maybe on the Star this morning, and it was, I can't remember exactly what the title was, but it basically was just saying Trump is now letting the Biden administration kind of not move in, but sort of start to merge the two, so that they can, I don't know what the exact wording was, but basically I think Trump has accepted his defeat.
And Hannah, what do you think about all this?
Well, it definitely is very chaotic. It's hard to know what is true and what's happening and what's not, what's just conjecture and what actually, is unfolding right now. So, we do know that there are still legal battles going on in different states. The votes have not been decided in certain states. And the U.S. election has not been called yet. Who is the winner? So Joe Biden can't really say that he is the president-elect. I think we'll have to wait till those legal battles are finished and the election is fully called to know what's going on. It'd be nice to have some finality, either way. It's kind of hard when you don't really know what's happening or what to expect yet.
Well, some would say that because Joe Biden has already won so many states, that based on the Electoral College, which is the way to win in the states, that he won. You don't agree?
I would say, the whole mail-in ballot, the mail-in voting system allowed for the possibility of tremendous voter fraud. And we just saw a lot of weird things happening. Even on election night, his numbers were going up. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're going to stop counting now. And then we wake up the next morning and he had even more Joe Biden had even more electoral college votes. And then in states that Trump was leading in, all of a sudden he wasn't leading anymore. And a lot of fishy things were happening. So I don't pretend to be an expert on what's happening there. But we have to wait until it actually is called to know for sure what's happening, so that the American people are respected and their votes are counted as they should be.
So you don't think that Joe Biden is the president? Do you think he's going to be? Let's assume that everything's counted. Do you think that he will be?
Okay, so it's very interesting. I was about a week and a half ago when, I think it was on a Saturday, when all the mainstream media all of a sudden at a coordinated time announced that Joe Biden was the projected winner. And everybody forgot about the word projected that was clearly put in all the titles and in all the articles. And then everybody acted like, oh, he's the winner now. And, he's the president-elect. So he's still projected to win. It's not been decided yet.
Interesting. Christina and Anna, what do you think about that? Do you think that the fact that all those votes haven't been counted means that he shouldn't be declared the winner?
The thing is that there's no evidence, and someone just commented, it was Marcia, she commented, no voter fraud has been found anywhere. Almost every lawsuit has been tossed out, and we're seeing now, like even his supporters, like Fox News, are getting sick of this rhetoric of him being, that the election was stolen from him. And these are people who support him who have just had enough because there's no evidence. So I think, we probably shouldn't just come to the conclusion and say, he 100% won, but that's what it looks like, and there's no proof that that's not what's going to happen.
Well, we're going to leave it there for now. Obviously, next week we're going to check in once again to the shit show that is the United States election 2020. But let's move on to Kyle Rittenhouse, who posted bail. He is accused of fatally shooting 2 people and wounding 1 during a demonstration on August 25th that followed the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He had some major donors. It was a $2 million bail, and $150,000 of it was donated by actor Ricky Schroeder, and another portion, large sum of money, was donated by the MyPillow CEO, Mike Lindell, among the many high-profile donors. What's your reaction to this, guys? The fact that he killed these 2 people, he wounded 1, and posted $2 million bail? What's your reaction to this?
I'm sure if you know me, my reaction is I'm furious. I know that he's, people will make the argument he's a child, but I can tell you right now, we were all 17 once, and I don't think any of us would have done something like that. So I have no sympathy for him. The fact that he posted bail and is out disgusts me, and I can't wait to see him go back to jail and rot there. Thanks.
Well, I consider the opposite of Christina. I actually think he had, I saw the videos of what happened. If someone comes and attack me and I have a gun to defend myself, I will defend myself. And I don't care the intention of other person. You are doing harm against me. You are attacking me. I have the right to defend myself. Now, what happened is that he had a gun that he wasn't allowed to have. That's the main legal issue that is happening here. But, if you see the entire environment that happened during that event, it was complete madness. It was literally bananas, like I have said before, because legit, it is super violent. It involved a lot of vandalism. It involves also looting. And don't get me wrong, but it's like there is this. If I'm not wrong, it's Florida, the ones that they're pushing a bill to defend themselves using guns.
The Stand Your Ground bill.
Exactly. If someone is looting, and it's very simple. Don't want to die? Dude, don't commit vandalism. Don't loot. Don't do crazy shit, because otherwise you can get killed. It's as simple as that.
Vandalism and looting should not lead to death. I understand that it's a crime and you shouldn't be doing it, but I don't know how you could justify murder over.
For me, property rights are sacred. That's my logic.
I don't. So I guess we disagree there. I just don't think that there's, if somebody's not, I don't know. Like I would not say that there's grounds to shoot somebody because they vandalized your property. There's other means of having those things resolved. You can sue somebody. You can you can press charges against somebody. So there's different things you can do. The thing that I'm having a hard time understanding is he went to this protest with a rifle on him, an assault weapon on his back. To say that okay, fine, maybe let's say it was self-defense. You've got an assault rifle on your back and you're scared. You've got the most powerful weapon in the world, and you're obviously not in the world, but you know what I mean. You have the upper hand. You have a rifle, and to say that you can use that's self-defense. Sorry, but you with a gun automatically have the upper hand, and there's no reason to take this isn't just, oh yeah, he was defending himself, whatever, there was a lot of violence happening. No, these are 2 lives that are gone now.
Okay, but let's put it on the other side. You see me with a rifle, myself. Would you approach me and attack me being a rational human being? You wouldn't, because it's obviously that I can kill you.
Right, but then that's now saying that it's the fault of the victim, which isn't fair. You can't say that. Yeah, sure. I personally wouldn't approach somebody with a rifle. I wouldn't approach somebody I don't approach people who give me any kind of bad vibe.
Well, I want
exactly.
I want to hear Hannah's reaction before
Okay.
we come back to you, Hannah.
Well, I would say I agree with Anna on this topic. So, I mean, we have to look at the context. It was a tremendously violent and chaotic BLM protest that was happening, and they were looting and rioting and burning down businesses, many of them which were Black. And Kyle came there to defend some of the business owners, and he was personally attacked himself by 3 different people in very violent ways. And all 3 of the people who attacked him had criminal records. One of them had been in jail for 15 years, and so he acted out of self-defense. Like, I'm not defending the fact that he killed them or anything like that, but he acted out of self-defense. And the whole circumstance is just unfortunate because when the police were not being able to properly deal with all the riots and the violence that was happening, then you have people with good hearts and good intentions that are coming to try to defend themselves and businesses that are being destroyed for stupid reasons. And then unfortunate things happen like that. So basically, it's a system that's falling apart, but I believe that Kyle acted out of good intent to help protect the businesses.
That's the other thing that I wanted to add. Why is people reacting this way in first place? Unfortunately, it's because the police has failed to actually address all the acts of vandalism that had taken place and the lootings. Like, I read this article by Reason Magazine, and it's one of the best articles that I have read regarding Minnesota, that basically he says these police enforcement, they felt once when they killed this man, George Floyd, in a way that it shouldn't happen at all. And then it felt twice because they let people do reorders, do whatever they want.
Well, I mean, I would say a lot of the police have tried to do what they should be doing, and that's defending innocent people and keeping law and order. But with the whole defund the police movement, that's created a very toxic environment against police officers, and they're not able to do their job properly.
That's part of the problem. I totally agree.
Christina?
I don't know. I don't see how you can defend it. I don't care. Listen, if you are attacking me physically, I understand. That's not what happened here. This is a 17-year-old child who had access to a rifle. So in the first place, he shouldn't have even been able to access that gun. And now it just the fact that this kind of thing. I don't know.
I don't know why people are not equally or more upset about all the violence that the BLM rioters and protesters have done, and the amount of damage they've done, and killing people too.
People are not mad about that, but you can't. We're letting somebody off the hook for killing 2 people, and I think plenty of people are angry about the vandalism, about the violence, about the deaths that have resulted from these protests. Nobody's saying that this violence is good, but to just throw this like away as self-defense, I don't understand.
We are going to have to move on because we're already
we need an episode based on this only.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good episode idea.
Are you looking into the future?
Yes.
I don't know. Well, lastly, we have to do a quick coronavirus update, which is part of the subject of our main story, which another record, over 1,500 cases in Ontario, and there's been a lockdown declared for Toronto and Peel. We're not going to talk about whether the lockdown is worth it or not right now, but what do you guys think about the soaring cases?
Well, we're having increased testing, and COVID is becoming less deadly. And even though we have cases, the death rate is becoming tremendously low, and COVID is not posing nearly as much danger as it did to people in the beginning.
Interesting. And Anna?
Well, we have a second lockdown. We don't know what is going to happen. Like, my forecast is that people are going to struggle more because on top of that, we're entering the winter season. So many activities that people could do outdoors, they're not able to do it. Now they're going to be confined in their homes, which is sad. Well, but we are going to discuss that further.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to discuss that further. So now let's move on to our main topic, which is government lockdown. See, I got it right this time. Thank God we're in York Region because... Let me just get that. There we go. Thank God we're in York Region because York Region was excluded from the latest round of lockdown orders imposed by the Ontario provincial government. Toronto and Peel Region have moved into near total lockdown with all non-essential businesses having to shut their doors, including but not limited to hair salons, clothing stores, and even photography studios. That's why Elliott Raben Productions is in Vaughan. Part of the restrictions include no indoor organized public events and social gatherings except with members of the same household, meaning if we were just south of Steeles Avenue, 5 minutes away, this show wouldn't be possible. So, with these new measures taking effect just yesterday, we thought it'd be the perfect time to discuss them right here on the Raben Report. Do lockdowns work? What is the economic toll of such measures? And most importantly, how do they affect the people they're supposed to protect? Tonight, we find out. And just a reminder to our viewers that we are live on Facebook, so make sure to comment on our feed to have your thoughts read live on air. Guys, let's begin. Do lockdowns actually work? Hannah.
I would say they don't work, and the first lockdown didn't work, so why have a second one?
Well, very concise answer. Anna, do you agree with Hannah or do you disagree?
Well, I think the first lockdown in a certain way lowered down the cases. At least that was my perception. Maybe you have different data and numbers and I would like to see that. But from my point of view, it actually had an effect.
Well, I would say so. It's funny how one thing can morph into something else, and we don't really remember what the purpose of a lockdown was in the beginning. So in the beginning, back in March, it was just for 2 weeks to prevent the hospitals from being overwhelmed. It was not even to slow the spread or anything like that. And then just kept being extended and extended and extended. And so I understand, not wanting the hospitals to be overwhelmed or stuff like that. But that never happened, and it never was even near that, even when things reopened. And now currently, COVID-19 patients are using less than 2% of Ontario's hospital beds and less than 2% of ICU capacity. So it doesn't really make sense to go into another lockdown again, especially in these regions where when the Ontario government released statistics about how COVID is spreading in Peel, Toronto, and Ottawa, schools and long-term care homes were the greatest area where COVID was spreading, and those places are still open because they're government facilities, but everything else is shut down, including restaurants and gyms where it was 2 or 3% or less of the amount of COVID cases were coming from there.
Well, I don't think you can really shut down long-term care facilities.
Well, they were, in a sense, they were shut down because the visitation stopped.
Right. Yeah.
But for a long time, the visitation was still happening, but now they've been stopped.
Yeah.
And there were some huge outbreaks in the beginning of the pandemic in March, but now there are retirement homes that are having outbreaks right now. So
I think one thing with that is it's kind of inevitable when you look at this, and I think we've come to learn that this doesn't just affect one population, but it does one population, elderly, are at a higher risk, right, of becoming very ill or dying from this illness. So I think it makes sense that we're seeing it in long-term care facilities or retirement homes.
But going back to the original question, do you agree with Hannah that they don't work, and do you agree with Anna that it didn't work? Both of them, that it didn't work, or do you agree with Hannah that it didn't work in March?
It worked in March, I think.
You think?
Yeah.
Why?
I think we did see cases go down by the end of and I know things started to open up in the summer, but I think by the end of the summer we were seeing pretty low numbers. And yeah, no, I think we saw numbers go down. Hospitals were clearing up, and I just think that it was a good move, and I think we saw a lot of positive benefits from that lockdown. But maybe this second one, there's some kinks that need to be worked out.
Hannah, you don't think the first one worked, even though the numbers did decline. So why do you think that is?
Okay, well, so I would say we have to go back to, I mean, not even did do lockdowns work and did the first lockdown work. It's does the government have a right to put us all under house arrest? That's the ultimate question. So if you look at the Emergencies Act from 1985, which was the first thing the government used to lock us down, the words special temporary measures are repeated in there many, many times. And it says that whatever acts the government does have to be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, and must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights that are not to be limited or abridged even in a national emergency. So as we've seen in the first lockdown and now in the second one in various areas, all of people's Charter of Rights and Freedoms have been taken away, like the freedom of assembly, freedom of mobility, their medical rights, their bodily autonomy, all these different types of things. So potentially at the beginning when we didn't know how contagious COVID was, and I think it's unfortunate that every country basically except Sweden followed China's example. But maybe at the beginning could be justified for a short period of time. But basically all of the lockdowns now are absolutely unconstitutional, and we're going to start to see the legal battles starting in courts now. Have already started, but especially this weekend with, I know certain churches are going to be staying open and certain businesses are like, we've had enough. You've destroyed us.
That's what concerns me regarding this second lockdown. And the reason is because I think that now people are not going to take it like they did in the beginning. Like, people are going to feel tired. People are going to start challenging the government. And honestly, for me, that's human nature. That certainly just starts happening. It happens in Italy some weeks ago. I saw some news, European news, about how in some Italian cities, people started to protest. People started to violently react to the government putting another lockdown on them. So that's something that concerns me about this second lockdown, because I can expect some challenges for the government now.
Yep.
Christina.
Okay, wait, there was a lot of back and forth there. Is there there was a specific question that you started with?
You brought up the fact, Hannah, that you believe that the government is infringing on the rights of people.
Okay, yeah.
Do you agree?
I think I'd agree to some extent. When you look at it by definition, a lot of things that have been happening during this pandemic are infringements on our individual rights. However, I think we need to understand that, or we need to accept some exceptions when it comes to a worldwide pandemic where people are becoming so severely ill and people are dying. I think we have a responsibility as a society to get things under control, because I could be, other people may not feel the same way, but I care about more than just myself. I care about the health of, everybody around me and my loved ones and people I don't know. I don't want people dying from this disease. Death is inevitable. It's going to happen. But if we can stop, this is not a pleasant way to go out. This is not a pleasant illness to have. So I do think that we need to give up some of our, you don't want to wear a mask, for example. Maybe just suck it up, because at the end of the day, it's going to be beneficial.
Well, some people would say suck it up, then you lose your freedom and just follow what they say blindly. some people would say that. How do you
justify
it?
I can see that too, and I've heard that argument. These people higher up are telling you to put a mask on, and you just do it because you're scared, and there's a lot of fear behind all of it.
Do you think the lockdowns increase the fear and severity of the situation?
100%, and I think it is a severe situation. But definitely, if the government's telling you don't leave the house unless it's essential, or avoid certain places, avoid certain people, and it's definitely scary, and locking us down definitely contributes to the fear of COVID.
Now, in regards to that fear, again, Hannah, you said that governments shouldn't have that right. So, what kind of control does the government have when they impose these lockdowns? And clearly, as we've heard from Christina, it increases the fear of people. Is that the intent of the government to purposely increase the fear, or do you think they're doing it for the sake of public safety?
That's a good question. So, I mean, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Constitution were created as governing principles for our country, and they are meant to keep the government in check, not the Canadian people. So whatever the government does, with laws and regulations and everything like that, they have to be able to be subject to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And if they unduly violate any of the sections in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, or unduly violate any of our rights and freedoms, they have to give a reason for why they're doing it, and they have to justify it, and it has to be able to be held up in court. So that's an important thing to think about. And also the fact is, I mean, I think the argument that, just be compassionate. Well, if we look at the numbers, like I absolutely care for older people. I mean, everybody does. We all care for those in our lives, especially those who are older. But if we look at the COVID-19 deaths here in Canada, or those who have been attributed to COVID-19, it's about 11,521. But at the same time, so far this year, Canada has had 111,600 deaths. So 1,000% more deaths caused by drug overdoses, canceled surgeries, delayed cancer diagnoses, and other conditions worsened by the negative impacts of lockdowns.
Well, we are going to get to the health, the mental, physical health of the effect of lockdowns a little later in the show, but that's an interesting point. But you mentioned the amount of deaths, right? There's a significant difference between the amount of deaths in Canada versus the States that didn't really have a lockdown in the beginning, and then they decided, okay, it's okay. Trump's administration was going to rallies, doing all these things, and Canada hunkered down and had a lockdown, and we had a severe difference in the amount of cases. So that amount of deaths, wouldn't you say that that's a result of the lockdowns?
That's another good question. So, I mean, it's not just whether the government's locked down or not. It's also what the condition of the healthcare was in their state, or the condition of their hospitals, the resources, everything like that. And it's interesting, if you look at the states who had the strictest lockdown measures, so New York and California, they also had the highest rate of COVID deaths. I know that also had to do with density and things like that, and people's age. But I think that the way, especially with Governor Cuomo in New York, and how he put people, he had basically like a guideline or whatever, that people from retirement homes, if they got COVID and they went to the hospital, they had to go back to their retirement home and basically infect the whole place. And he's responsible for thousands of deaths as a result. And then if you look at Governor Kristi Noem of, oh my goodness, what's her state again?
Pennsylvania?
North Carolina, I think.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Anyway, so one of the more spacious states. Anyway, Governor Kristi Noem, though, she's a huge example of giving the people the knowledge and giving them the information of what's going on, and letting them, basically putting in small guidelines, but letting them be adults and make their own decisions for themselves.
Well, Tanya actually agrees with you in one sense. She says that lockdowns cause more deaths than the virus, because people are, it comes back to the health and everything, but you said that the lockdown causes more COVID-related deaths than non-locking it down. Why? Why do you say that?
No, I'm just saying that, we've seen more deaths from other things because of canceled surgeries, because of suicides, because of overdoses, everything like that. In some provinces, they've had more deaths from overdoses and suicides than COVID.
Okay, so let's move on then to the economic impact of lockdowns. So the lockdown happened in March. There's a new lockdown in Toronto and Peel. Those are the facts. Now let's examine what the effects are. How have businesses been affected? specifically small business, and how have large businesses prospered?
Well, that depends on the industry when it comes to the business, right? Like, for example, a business that is specialized on doing masks or in doing hand sanitizers or in that kind of industry, of course, they're thriving. Like, these people are, like, I don't know, probably throwing money into the air. But other small businesses, like, for example, I went to this because I was preparing myself, so I went to the beauty salon this weekend.
So you were hoarding?
So I was like, oh, I'm gonna miss you, to the lady who does the threading and stuff.
I thought you were gonna say that to the makeup. I was like,
no. And she was like, don't worry, it's only 28 days, and
that's what the government said every single time.
Exactly. and I look at it, and what I thought was like, wow, these people are really relying that this will last during this period.
How it's going to be.
And honestly, I'm skeptical, because the last time they said it's only for this time, and we saw how they extended. And to be honest, so many small businesses, they barely made it to the last lockdown.
Well, that's the next thing that I'm curious. Why is it that major shopping centers like Walmart and Costco are allowed to stay open, but small businesses that can actually control the amount of people in their stores, they can literally say one person at a time, why are they forced to close?
I can't explain why, but it's so sad to see all these small businesses that are supporting a family or supporting a community are being shut down, and then that business, people who maybe shop at these stores are now being forced to go to the bigger
big box stores.
Yeah, big box stores like you said, Costco, Walmart, whatever. And so people who would maybe typically shop at small businesses or local businesses are now being pushed and forced to use these big supply chains. And
doesn't that go against the movement of people to support small business, get rid of the corporate world?
I think that the way they approach this is because Costco and Walmart, they sell essential like needs, like products, like food, for example. So that's why they remain open.
Well, the Bay actually had a lot of backlash downtown. The Bay at Yonge and Queen, they remained open because, according to them, they sold groceries, so they were considered an essential service. Now they
don't sell groceries. That's the thing.
Well, they closed now after a lot of backlash. But again, there are other small places that sell Dr. Seuss today, apparently, that sell groceries and essential goods. Again, why is it that these big stores have the right to be open when they actually can't control how many people are there? I mean, they can control...
Because they benefit the economy and they put money into...
But doesn't small business benefit the economy?
Sure, but they're not bringing in the kind of money that Costco is or that Walmart is.
Don't you
I think it also depends on...
It's a problem, but I'm not saying that that's not a problem. It's a huge issue, but all they see is money, right?
To be honest, I wouldn't close Costco or Walmart. One, because they sell a lot of affordable things for many families, especially Costco. Second, they are employing a lot of people. I know a lot of people that they told me, you know what, I don't want to rely on a government program. I don't want to receive money for doing nothing. So they actually went to work for Costco. And the problem here is, why do you have to shut down small businesses that are also selling essential products? So what is the right approach? Don't stop or close down these small businesses. That's the approach that I will take.
Now, Hannah, you are a music teacher. How did this closure... do you live in Toronto or Peel?
No, so I live in London, but I mean, obviously I was affected by the first lockdown. I mean, I don't think there's anybody, whether they own a business or not, who's not been deeply impacted by the lockdowns. But yeah, I mean, obviously for me, it affected me like on a little bit lesser scale because I just had to move my students online. But yeah, I mean, some students have, I have students who are coming in person now and it's wonderful, but some students are still online and they're very worried about the virus. And, I don't know when we'll be able to have in-person recitals again. And honestly, it just breaks my heart. Like one of my students, she's 12 years old and she goes to school and she's going to school with many people every day, but she still doesn't feel comfortable coming for a piano lesson because her parents are trying to limit how many people she sees. And she told me, she's like, I'm so afraid of dying from the virus. I'm like, I can promise you like 99% chance you're not going to die from the virus. And honestly, I find it so sad how the media has stirred up absolute hysteria, and if we just look at the facts, they don't support that. So, but I mean, for big government, the bigger the government gets, the more they pad their own pockets, and they support, basically corporate bailouts, corporate welfare, everything like that. And it's always the little person. It's always small businesses who lose out by big government.
So you would obviously agree then that it's a problem that these big businesses are allowed to stay open, and the small ones.
Well, I don't think it's a problem that they're allowed to stay open. I think it's a problem that small businesses have to shut down, and the government doesn't have the right to tell anybody whether they're essential or not. If anything, I mean, the government needs to, chill out and to have time out. Like, honestly, the government it's not a blob of unidentifiable things. It's people who we elected to represent us. So that's like giving someone your wallet to go to a store and buy one thing, and they buy the entire store. And it's like, well, sorry, you give me your wallet. That's what the government's done with the trust that we've given them.
And I think we maybe need to reevaluate what the government's definition of an essential business is, because there's a lot of things that have had to close down that are essential.
And that's exactly where I was going after you mentioned essential services, Hannah, and now that you mention it, Christina, what constitutes an essential service, and how does the government have a right, or how do they define it?
Well, they're also telling people what is and what isn't essential, and different things are essential to different people.
Yes.
And I don't think I agree that we need to limit our contact with people, and that we do need to. I do think in certain circumstances it's good for us to close. I don't want to say close businesses, because I know that sounds bad. These are people's livelihoods, but I understand the reasoning behind it. It's to limit contact. It's to limit the spread. And so I understand, but the government has decided essential is what? Like the new essential things are grocery, LCBO.
Mm-hmm. I know.
The LCBO is an essential service.
Apparently weed is not, though.
And very essential.
Weed is not.
Very essential, because every time I pass by the LCBO near my home, there is a big line. It reminds me of Venezuela, imagine.
Yes.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that? The fact that LCBO is an essential service?
Well, I think especially now with churches being shut down again, and Peel and Toronto, and then Ottawa. It's amazing. You can be jammed in Loblaws. You can be jammed in, lining up for Loblaws, but you can't be spread out in church or your synagogue or wherever your place of worship is. So like Christina said, that everybody has their own things that are essential to them. And that could be their one thing you took away from them. Like even like OTC Toronto, the gym that's been in the news a lot, it was just devastating. They had followed all the protocols, and many restaurants, they had created outdoor dining centers. They had all the plexiglass and all that. They were told they could reopen. And Doug Ford went to OTC Toronto, and he's like, oh, we're going to allow you to reopen and all that. And they're like, oh, good. And then he puts them in a red zone, and then he completely locks them down. And now they're going out of business.
Now, we actually had a restaurant that defied orders today, Adamson Barbecue in Etobicoke, defied orders. They had indoor dining, and the cops were called, and after that there was a huge line for their food. So in a sense,
move.
in a sense, the backlash and potentially the fine that they have to pay worked in their favor. Again, restaurants control people who dine inside. And when the new lockdown the first lockdown was removed, they said that every restaurant has to track who goes in there. So why are restaurants not considered essential? I mean, they're allowed takeout and curbside pickup delivery, but you're not allowed to dine inside.
I would say why for Adamson Grill, like I've been following that story today, like why was it safe to sit in his restaurant yesterday but not today? I mean, like, so is the magic, cut off? And also with the curfews that are being, instated in some states, it's like, honestly, so many of our government officials have become super superstitious, to be honest. Like, COVID's this like magic ghost that only comes out at certain times and only in certain places, right? Like, I understand, they're trying to do, what they can to make sure they, they're on the ball and stuff like that. But basically, we have to remember with politicians, they're always thinking about what's going to elect them for their next term. How are they going to be popular? How are their, popularity statistics doing? And also with the unelected health officials that are all of a sudden having a massive voice, they have never been affected once by any of the the pay cuts that we have taken or the jobs we've lost. Same thing with the politicians. They haven't lost, $1 in their salary. I think that if they were losing the amount of money in a proportion to what we have, they wouldn't be doing any of these things. Because basically, if someone's, deciding things for you in your life that don't affect them at all, you better think twice about that.
Yeah, actually, I was just reading about the economic impact in Canada. And just when it comes to the new federal spending, they are going to add 146 billions to the debt of federal spending.
And this spending, I'm going to come back to you. How have the CERB, the CESB, and the CRB programs affected this economic downfall, I should say?
Yeah, like just the nominal GDP of Canada is expected to fall 12%. And these are crazy levels. And to be honest, I don't know where the government is getting the money anymore.
They're printing it.
Exactly. That's what I'm afraid of. Because that will translate to inflation in the future.
Yes.
And believe me, I know how hyperinflation looks like. You don't want it in your life.
Yeah, you're talking about what's going on in Venezuela? Yeah. So what do you think about that? What do you guys think about not only the economic, the effect that the CERB has on the economy, but on the workforce? Has it made people say, you know what, Trudeau's giving me money, I don't have to go to work anymore? Or do you think people are saying, you know what, I'm going to get money from Trudeau, I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to have double the income? What has been the reaction to that?
I think we kind of touched on this in our first COVID episode, or no, it wasn't that. It was the
coronavirus part 2?
The UBI?
Maybe.
The UBI,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So I think that there is probably studies have been done where people who receive universal basic income, which is different than CERB, but let's kind of make a comparison.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, it's similar to universal basic income. It is.
So if you make the comparison, there's a lot of places where there's no evidence of it actually affecting the workforce. This, I feel, is a different circumstance because the workforce kind of has to... like if you're receiving universal or UBI, then that's not that's during a time where we're not going through a pandemic. But in this scenario, I think it's something that we need because people are out of work. People are being forced out of their jobs too, not by their own will. I think a lot of people, unless they're they have some kind of health condition where they can't expose themselves to the virus. I think a lot of people wish that they could still be out there working and making their own income. I think I think Canadians are very prideful. Canadians are hardworking people, and I do believe that people would be working if they could. So I can see where it's definitely a system that's being abused, but it is essential for these workers who are out of a job.
And let's go further into these workers, because the key here, and I think the most important part of this discussion, is the effect on people, the physical and mental health of the people that are under these lockdowns, that are suffering under this pandemic. How have people's mental health been affected? Because there are a lot more suicides happening now that the lockdowns are happening. People aren't able to, say, go pray, which is to them an essential service. What do you guys think? How have you guys been affected?
I think I'll just say that I think a lot of people who maybe even haven't experienced mental health problems in the past are probably experiencing it now because of the isolation and the you're being forced to stay away from people you love and forced to stop doing things that you enjoy. So I think there's people who are experiencing things that they never experienced before. In my own personal circumstance, I do suffer from mental illness, and thank God for my medication keeping me stable. But I can say that I have seen my own personal. I'm not in the greatest place of my life because I'm lucky enough that I get to be with my family and my boyfriend, but there's people who friends and other family that I love and I wish I could see, and it's definitely taking a toll on my mental health, and I wish I could go and do things, enjoy myself.
Does it help you? Does it help your mental health being able to come do the show?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well, for me, it does. Like, I live alone,
This is my
basically.
yeah, this is like the one time a week where I'm out of the house, you know?
Yeah, like interacting with people out of the computer. So, yeah, actually, I was just looking at some data in the US. In the US, that the lockdown hasn't been as bad as in here. And, for example, anxiety disorders, they were 3 times higher than in the 2019. And also symptoms of depression were 4 times higher than in 2019. And also in New York only, the Google searches increased for phrases like anxiety, panic attack, and insomnia. So yeah,
Wow.
like it also increased drug use.
Yeah, and the drug use is bad because now people are people who are addicted to drugs are now given this opportunity to, with more free time and less things, you know, less responsibility. That means more drug and alcohol abuse.
Now, part of mental health and allowing people to be mentally healthy is going to the gym. Hannah, you mentioned that earlier. Gyms are 0.001%. That's the rate of spread
Yes.
at a gym. So do you think that they should be considered an essential service and be allowed to stay open?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'll go back and say I believe everything should be open, but I mean, the government should never have shut gyms down in the first place. And I would say that, you know, existing is not living. Okay. And it's very interesting as we've seen a lot of our politicians and health officials, Doug Ford at, Stan Cho's wedding, no mask on, shaking hands, all of them like that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Dr. Fauci, in the baseball stadium with his friends on either side, no mask on, Nancy Pelosi at the hair salon, Patty Hajdu flying back home to see her family 8 times during the pandemic. If you want to know how serious the virus is and how deadly it is, just look at how our politicians are acting behind closed doors. So that will tell you that we have really nothing to fear about it, I would say. But, if you want to, focus on those who are most affected by COVID is seniors, right? And if we look at the numbers, so during the first wave of the pandemic and up to the end of May, the people in long-term care facilities and retirement homes accounted for more than 80% of all COVID deaths in the country. And so not only, in the first place, they're near their last stages of life. So family want to visit them, they want to be with them and everything like that. So they're not only dying from COVID, but they're dying in isolation, which is a terrible way to die.
Well, so you said that politicians are treating it like it's not happening. Why is that? Why is it fair that these politicians are traveling to their homes, traveling to see family, going to weddings, and yet we're under lockdown?
Because they're above the law.
Are they?
Exactly.
They're not, but when have you ever seen a politician follow the rules? Or if they break them, they get away with it. Every single time. So, not surprised.
So then,
Same.
going back to whether you think this lockdown is worth it, another way to see what people think of the lockdown is through the poll that we asked our viewers. And we didn't mention it in the beginning, but we are going to right now. The question we asked was, do you support government lockdowns? And Christina, what were the results?
Okay, so on Instagram, of all the votes, we had 51% said yes and 49% said no. On Facebook, we had 25% say yes and 75% say no. So we always see this, that there's like a difference in Instagram and Facebook responses, but
Instagram is very interesting because it's so
50-50.
Yeah, and then
but then Facebook is so polarizing. It's like drastically different.
So, this takes us to kind of the future. And when do you guys think this lockdown will be over? And on the other hand, do you think that York Region is going to be in lockdown next?
My region is in lockdown already, Toronto. So
No, York Region.
York Region.
Like where we are.
I have no idea. I honestly think it's going to be soon because everything is like following the same pattern, right? So it will be just a matter of weeks, I would say, probably even next week, I would guess. And how long are we going to be this way? I think we are going to have a sad Christmas Eve for those that celebrated.
Why is that, though? Why is it that you're allowed to go to Costco. You're allowed to go to Walmart, but you're restricted to be with the people of your own household. So in a sense, does that mean you can take your whole family to Costco, grab a tree, and just sit around it and say, Merry Christmas?
That's what I guess that we're going to do. Good idea, actually.
That's what I'm here for. Shalom. So what do you think about that, Hannah? The fact that, like are you guys going to defy restrictions, celebrate with family?
I would say the government has no place in my house, in my bedroom. Like, I mean, I'm so shocked. So many Canadians were like, F the government. I can do whatever I want in every area of their life. And I want freedom. I want choice. And then now they're like, oh, we must obey absolutely everything, the government says, including Dr. Tam saying, what we have to do during sex and everything like that. Like, how dare they? I mean, how arrogant can you get? So I think the lockdowns will continue until enough people push back and until enough court battles ensue and the government's put back in their place. And I just want to also say, I'm not against government. I believe in small government. I'm heavily involved in politics myself. So it's not like, oh, they're terrible and I'm good, But we have to keep the people that we elected accountable.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, now that you mentioned that, I think that a lot of people are going to continue with their celebrations during the holiday, but, behind doors, secretly. And what concerns me about it is the police mentality that some people started to develop during the previous lockdown. Like, some of them were calling the police, like, hey, I think my neighbor is meeting with a lot of people out of the household. Like, dude, why?
I understand the concern.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a difference though if it's like a 40-person party in Brampton versus
getting the cops called because there's one extra car in your driveway. Like, and that's the thing. I do think that as a community we have a responsibility to look out for ourselves and those around us. But there definitely people think that they now have the right to, the authority to. And I'll just admit it. I get so this whole thing has given me so much more anxiety than I already have. And if somebody is beside me in an aisle and their mask is like below their nose, I start freaking out and I inch away from them. And I'm like so tempted to tell them to pull it up over their nose, but I don't because I'm, whatever, I'm not going to say anything. But the fact that all this fear around it, like even I find myself wanting to tell people like how to wear their masks when it's not my job to. Because
in a suppressed society, the only way the suppressed people think that they have a little bit of freedom is if they can snitch and tell other people what to do. So it gives you like a false sense of like more authority when you're oppressed yourself, which is super sad.
That's a very interesting way of putting it.
I guess I'm oppressed.
Yeah,
you are.
We are.
At this point, we're all.
Yeah,
we're all oppressed. So, do you guys think that this lockdown, first of all, will be only 28 days? And second, wow, you're already shaking your heads. Let me get that on. And do you think that it's actually going to be worth it?
It's not going to be 28 days because they said that last time and it wasn't 28 days. So I don't believe them. That's all.
Yeah, that summarized my opinion too. Like they say the last time that it was going to be this certain amount of days and they just continue extending and it's going to happen. Lucky for the people who doesn't have annoying neighbors and can meet in their house and invite friends. In my case, I live in a condo and even the security person is like, now you're not allowed to have this amount of people. And if I bring someone else, they phone me, like legit. So and they can call the police.
If you go up to your apartment with somebody, they will tell you no?
Yeah.
Okay, like, no.
See? Crazy word.
Because the other thing is, I know that they say that you're only supposed to see people in your household, but aren't there exceptions? Like if it's somebody like a caregiver or somebody that
I believe there are exceptions.
Okay,
yes.
so how do they know? How do they know it's not somebody who's taking care of you?
For example, last Friday, I had some friends and the restriction was maximum 10 people per apartment. And my friends were like 5. And then I received a phone call. You are now not allowed to have 10 people in your apartment. You are only allowed to have like 7. And it's like, and they're counting. And it's like insane. Like,
the thing is, that's your space that you're paying for. That is your. So that's the thing. I understand telling people not to do it, but now we can just because you live in a building, now they can tell you what you can and can't do in your own apartment that you're paying for, that
Exactly.
it is your property.
Well, I would say whatever happened to my body, my choice. Does that only apply in the case of abortion? Like, what about everything else? So I think it's sad. Like, I just use this analogy all the time. Just say that, you know, you had a friend and they had a boyfriend who was super abusive and told them, you have to stay in your home forever. You have to wear a mask if you go out. You have to do this. You can't go see somebody else. You can't do this. If he controlled every aspect of her life, you'd be like, oh my goodness, my friend is in serious trouble. We need to get help for her. But just because it's the government, it's okay. And I think that, you know, we naturally, you know, defer to authority in some ways because we're like, they know more, stuff like that. But whatever happened to us, whatever happened to our own brains and our own rational abilities to evaluate the information that we're given by the government.
I know that we're close to finish, but domestic abuse. Domestic abuse has increased, people.
There are so many women, and I'm sure men too, that are stuck in abusive relationships that they can't get out of because of this lockdown. They can't move because, you know, there aren't apartment showings or whatever happening right now. They're not working, so they don't have the financial stability to do so. All these things that have been shut down. Now there's all these people who are stuck being abused, and apparently the abuse, these women and men have been abused in the past, so they've been in long-term abusive relationships. But the lockdown has caused the abuse to be more severe.
That's crazy.
Yep. Well, I do want to mention that a great organization is the Elspeth Hayward Center for Women in. Oh. There goes my camera. Women in abusive relationships and such. They are, it's a great organization. Go ahead, Hannah. Tell us about. Again, you know, we had a comment from Jake Benaim. Christina, you want to read the comment?
Yeah, so I actually really like this comment. So he said, we can have reasonable discourse on best health/safety practices, but calling health professionals arrogant for doing their job and telling us what activities pose an increased risk in virus transmission is a bit of a stretch.
How do you respond?
Well, I would say they're learning just as much as we are, right? They obviously have more information in some cases than we do, but they're, you know, every day they're changing. Oh, wear a mask, and oh, don't wear a mask, or do this, or don't do that. So it's changing all the time. So this virus was new. I mean, obviously we know it more than we did at the beginning, but they were just receiving the information just like we were. And I understand that they have degrees and everything like that, but they have to be held accountable, and we have to think about who's lobbying them, why are they doing what they're doing, and we have to listen to the doctors and the nurses who are speaking out from so many hospitals saying the hospitals are empty. I have a very close family member who works at one of the largest hospitals in Toronto, and she said the ICU was never overrun, and basically they're dealing with so many other illnesses and regular surgeries and all that, and there's practically no COVID people there. So if they're silencing the regular doctors and nurses on the floors in the hospitals, we have to question the health officials who are just sitting in their ivory towers telling us this and that, whatever.
Yeah, and I think another, just to add to that, we see examples of where they misled us already, right? Like they were saying you don't need to wear a mask back in February, and now it's literally a law that you have to. So I do understand that. I think what I like about Jake's point is, like, we obviously, I don't think any of us here have, you know, a medical education, and I do think we need to put some trust into these people, but they do need to recognize the mistakes they've made. If they've misled us, if they've given us misinformation, they do need to be held accountable for that.
Which they're refusing to be held accountable for.
Of course, but of course they are. Like it doesn't surprise me. That's what always happens with these things. But I think that I do put my trust in them. Maybe I'll be skeptical about certain little things, like,
because
but for the most part, like I myself am not qualified, and I don't know enough to say that, to come out and say that they're giving me incorrect information.
But if they're not following their own information,
exactly,
of course,
that's the problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem. So, politicians, follow your own advice. That's pretty much the advice that we can give you. But that was our show for this week. Thank you to everybody that tuned in and that messaged us live. Hannah, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure having you. What'd you think?
Oh, it was amazing. I absolutely love it. I love to come back again. I love having conversations and, productive dialogue with people who believe the same things or different, and that's how we make the world a better place.
Agreed.
Listen to one another.
And that's what the show is all about. Christina and Anna, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thanks.
Thank you, Elliot.
My amazing expert so-called panel. Next week, guys, next week is the season 9 finale of the Raben Report. So do not miss it. It's going to be
so quickly.
I know. It's going to be a very spicy topic that we will announce obviously next Monday. And it's going to be right here. Same day, same time, almost the same people. That is, if we don't get locked down. I'm Elliot Raben. Have a good night, everyone.